Because what you, the unsung heroes in the wastewater industry, do matters. Join me, Suzan Chin-Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, a longtime veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry each week as I deliver industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, training and retaining great talent, sales and marketing, leadership and growth, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Let's dive in.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. Today, we are visiting with Dave Smoljan, who is the owner of Extra Air. So welcome to the show, Dave.
Howdy. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, so glad to hear it. Well, Dave, before we get started into what we're going to talk about today, give the audience a little bit of your background and just to kind of frame where we're going to go and how the Extra Air technology really got started and why.
Sure. Going way back, I have a large mechanical background, and I used to be a certified mechanic, and then I got into real estate and real estate development and general contracting. So I have a strong kind of mechanical construction base. And then in about 2008, I semi-retired and got rid of all that stuff, mainly because of the economy. And I was doing I sat on the board at Tri-Area Sanitation, and I looked at this and I said, this might be interesting to get into. So I got into the wastewater system, and from there I went to Red Rocks Community College in their water quality management degree. I was an operator at a couple facilities, and in 3.5 years I was able to get my AAA status of water, wastewater, and industrial wastewater. And from there I managed a lot of facilities, some Superfund sites and that type of stuff. Sorry,
Ooh,
I
okay.
may need to clean this up a little bit, but
That's
yeah.
okay.
So,
our editor will take care of those pauses.
I'm kind of starting to stumble a little bit, but let me
okay.
take it into. So, in 2018, I worked for an aeration company, and when I was doing construction installs there, I thought of this product that I thought would be really good for wastewater, mainly for lagoons, because I kept seeing my fellow operators and friends going out on these flat bottom boats with old life jackets that were people handed down or gave them or whatever, and they would float out to these surface aerators and try to unclog them from rags and propellers falling off, or they had to be maintenanced and greased. And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So 2019-ish, mid COVID, I was laid off, and I said, you know what? I have a pond in my backyard, and it's about 8 feet in depth. And I said, I'm gonna explore this. So in the meantime, I was learning SolidWorks and became certified in SolidWorks, and so I started putting things together, and something that I thought was going to be so easy to do. I was like, boy, I can't believe nobody ever did this because it's so simple. Well, it wasn't simple. It actually took me on about a 3-year journey on a lot of failures to get it to where I had 100% repeatability. And what I mean by that is this system is designed to float from the shore to the desired location, either in the basin, lagoon, or wherever you're going to apply this product. And then it sinks to the floor, and then you apply air to it, and it basically bubbles. And when you want to move it, you literally, from the same blower structure, you inflate the pod, and it floats to the top, and you move it over in a matter of minutes. So when I started this, I thought it was going to be easy. It flipped over. It did all kinds of crazy stuff. It was out of bounds. So I would go back to the drawing board, and eventually it I figured out all the little nuances to get it to do it 100% of the time. And so now I'm excited because now I can go out there and in good conscience market this product to uh, whoever needs it, basically. It's really works out really well for long-term application for lagoons or smaller wastewater systems in, in these smaller communities, 3, 4, 500 households. So with that said, we've been having really good luck with it. Our water quality is there. It puts out about 200 SCFM per aeration pod. It's very simple to deploy. It's very operator friendly. The only maintenance requirement on this system once you get it installed is to change the air filter. And the air filter is basically onshore. Takes 5 minutes to do it. You open up a can, you blow it off with the air from the blower as the blower is running, you put it back and you're done. And yeah, it's a cool system. The operators love it because it's literally almost hands off and just does its thing. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of good attributes on it. And I can go through a list, but it might make this really long.
I hear you. Well, you were telling me offline before we came on the show about one particular city that decided to try this that was having some problems. And I thought, just kind of going through that story of the problem and the solution, obviously the extra air system, and then the outcome for them would be of great interest to the listeners.
Sure. So I don't know if I'm at liberty to say the town's name, but there was a little town, southern Colorado, and they were having high TSS, high BOD, effluent issues. And so we were contacted by one of a gentleman or actually I reached out to Colorado Rural Water, who is, they have a lot of background in all these small systems. And he referred me to this and he said, why don't you see if you could help them out? So I made contact and I said, sure, let's go out there and we'll put one in and see what you think. And I have this philosophy of rent to own process because I don't want to sell somebody something that's not going to work. I've been on the wrong side of a lot of new plant startups, a lot of new additions to plants, and things that were represented to us didn't kind of really work the way it was. And you were so far deep into it, you had to make it work. So it ended up having a Band-Aid and a Band-Aid, and we got it to work, a lot of them, but it didn't work as advertised. And that's putting my name on it. And being an operator, I want to make sure that what I'm presenting to the client is true. And I want to give them the opportunity to go ahead and test it out, see if it works for them. And if it doesn't work, they don't have that much invested into it. So we went ahead and we put one of these in within 1 month. Their influent BODs were 350. Their TSS was in the 400 range, and effluent was BODs were 4, TSS was 12, and their ammonias were 6. So it literally, they went from a potentially violating scenario constantly to very clean water, very good water, very good effluent. And it's been in there about 4 or 5 months now. We're looking for the winter to come because the winter is a big driver. So going back to the background of that, they were operating surface aerators. And so surface aeration is, there's no bar screen up front in their lagoon. So a lot of times they'll get rags or something caught up in their propeller, and they'll have to either move the surface aerator close to the shore where somebody could kind of get in there and try to unclog it, because what happens is the rags will get bound up in the propeller, and then they can't do the mixing. It shorts out the motor, it just trips it out. So you have to, you know, go in there and manually try to free the impeller up. So they were constantly having to do this. Wintertime was an issue because the wintertime, if they didn't run it 24/7, which was just becoming a big energy demand on them, the icebergs would float, and then it'd get caught up in the impeller, or it would freeze. And as they start up, these surface aerators, they squirt a lot of water on themselves, so they would freeze and they start to list. And so we're excited because our system literally is on the bottom of the lagoon. And if it's just fine bubble diffusers, and it's putting out just, fine bubble diffused aeration, 200 SCFM per pod. We have an area of influence on of about 125 foot, depending on the depth of treatment, that to where the air bubble will get out. So from my previous research in my pond and stuff, when we were down to about 20 below, we had about a 65 foot of opening of fresh water during these times where everything else was all froze up. So I'm assuming that these lagoons are relatively small, so they're not going to have any freeze up issues, and should be able to kind of keep process going. Obviously, when the water gets cold, nitrification is inhibited, but we'll be able to do as best we can as anybody can, during the winter months. So,
well, now with these units, do they come in various sizes, or is it something that it's a one size and it's modular where you can do multiple units if you have a larger body of water for a lagoon?
yes, we can put 2 units on one blower, and that works out really well. And then theoretically, you could put, if you had a big extensive system in, I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure I want to go that way, because that would be one aeration system and you would be stealing air off the header system. And I think it may be a little much to regulate that, but we haven't tried that. And so our main focus is trying to, number one, work with the smaller municipalities, because they're really are the ones that are in trouble. They don't have a full-time operator. They really need help on making clean water, and a lot of them just don't know how to do it. And they're all fighting these surface aerators. So we, being a new company, we're just trying to focus on that and then grow into it. We're also, the whole reason we started this company was emergency aeration. So,
okay.
And
Tell
that
me
was
about that.
that was really the big driver on all of this. And I have another product that is similar to this, to where it's a scissor bed. It still puts out, each one is puts out about 200 SCFM. You're able to place it into a mechanical basin, so a concrete aeration basin for a municipality and stuff, lower it in there, and it just floats on top of the water. You're able to set the depth of the diffuser level wherever you would need to be, so it can work in conjunction with the existing aeration system, or it can be a standalone system and just do it if your system failed. So that was one of our biggest drivers. When I looked at starting this, I was operating at Johnstown, and I was doing consulting work for them. They have 2 wastewater plants. One was a SBR mechanical plant, and the other one was is a lagoon system. And we literally, they were in the midst of a renovation, but the 2 SBR trains that were working, the diffusers were 20 years old, which is well past the lifespan of the diffusers, and they were choked off. They weren't supplying enough air. So nobody wanted to spend any money on it because it was all going to get redone anyway within the year. So I said, let's put these in. We'll get you across the finish line. We made good water up until then. The operators were still able to run the SBRs in the way they were supposed to, and they were in there for 10 months. And so that got them in compliance. The new plant came online. We took them out and we moved them, somewhere else. So that was the whole thing, because part of the problem was with that when we started to do research on where we're going to get how we're going to solve the problem, stay in compliance, there really wasn't that much out there. There were some Titan systems that were big, kind of inducted aeration systems that were a 50 horsepower motor, but to get them there, to get the startup, to get everything wired, you were looking at $100,000 bill.
Wow.
And these were either rental or buy, but the whole deal was it wasn't readily available. And that's the whole thing.
Okay.
Our system is readily available. If you give us a call, we can ship in 24 hours. And when we get to your site with the product, so wherever in the United States, we can hotshot it out to wherever it needs to go and be able to have your system back up and running within, 2 hours after we get there. All we need is power. We supply we have the blowers, we have the piping, we bring everything. You just have to supply us with either the 208 or the 480 power to connect to our panels, and you're off and running. And what that does is that gets you the ability to keep your treatment process going. You don't have to take the basins down, and it gives you extra air, breathing room, quote, not to pun on words, but it gives you a chance to take a deep breath and say, okay, we got a problem. Who do we call? We call our engineer, we call our aeration company. Right. How are we going to do this? And so it takes that frantic chaos moment, and at least now you can think rationally, because a lot of these plants don't you can't just put them on another train and overload another train, because everything just goes haywire. And that was the big main driver of it. This pod deal kind of morphed into it. And so those are the kind of the two big products we have. And then we have some other stuff that we'll grow into eventually. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to you were saying the surface aerators and what you call a floating aerator, but that it goes to the bottom, because there are, floating aerators, which actually float on the surface and move around. And so what is that big differential with this? I guess I'm playing devil's advocate here, of one versus the other. What are the advantages of these systems, of one that you're sinking to the bottom, and then how often do you have to move it around, and how easy is that to do? And I guess from my own knowledge, why would you need to move it around? Or what would be the reasoning for moving it around?
So good question. So there's a lot of reasons why you would want to move it around. Number one reason is just to make sure, and this all kind of depends. A lot of these systems, especially in these kind of small line lagoon systems, they're supposed to kind of clean their sludge out every 5 years or so, and they forget to do that because it's such an expense.
Right.
So a lot of the solids and a lot of debris gets caught up on the bottom. And eventually, as that debris grows, you start to lose your treatment area because you're losing volume in your lagoon. So your treatment starts to get impacted. So, and I'll caveat into another point that you're making, because we're actually going into a super saturation of air for periods of time to try to consume the organic. But moving back to what your original question is one of the reasons is that you being able to float it, place it wherever you want, and then you can kind of get into that kind of septic area to where that flocculative bacteria and stuff, that anaerobic bacteria, you can kind of dust all that up and try to get some of that moved out so you can start to digest that and get some treatment in that. But also with that is in a lot of lagoons, when the influent comes in, they'll short circuit because just if there's no movement around, basically the water will find a path, the easiest way to the next point of the exit. So a lot of times you can take the pod and put it in that path. Now you're increasing you induced air bubbles
Okay.
in there. Now you're pushing it around. So you're just using your whole basin. And the beauty part about this is if you move it up every once a month or so and move it over 10, 15 feet, you're kind of getting that sludge layer busted up to where surface aerators they're tethered in. So you think about it, they're floating on the water and there are 4 points of contact that kind of hold it into position. So in order to move that, you have to undo the cable, slide it over, and they have just they either upflow or downflow, however they're wired, whatever best for your system. And then there's a mixing energy out to where they'll actually you'll get a sludge buildup around where the sludge falls off from the way the impeller is. And the other side of that is you're shearing flock when you do that. So flock is the sludge,
Right.
the microorganisms. So all that is kind of getting beat up with all this stuff. So ours is just a fine bubble. It literally just sits there. It aerates, and yeah, it's in operator friendly. Our boys don't have to go out in the lagoons to do any maintenance. It's all done from here. Even to float it up. I mean, it literally takes 1.5 minutes to inflate it. It comes to the surface, you move it over, you deflate it, and you're done for the day. That's how easy it is. So
it's a really simple design. You also mentioned to me, and I don't know if you want to say it on the podcast, but it has a very nice price point for smaller communities that may be dealing with a really tight budget.
yeah, and everything's kind of blower design. So getting back to our package. Our package is, if PD blowers are great because they're a positive displacement blower and they inject the same amount of air all the time. The problem is they're extremely expensive. So a 20 horsepower blower would put out about 200 SCFM, 15 to 20, and it would go down to a deeper depth. So when we're into these smaller applications where we don't have a high static head to overcome, regen blowers for us are the way to go. If you size them correctly, they're very simple to use. They're very low energy. So a lot of these blowers, like we can do these small lagoons up to 8 feet, 9 feet in depth with a 4 or 5 horsepower blower. So depending on your kilowatt hour, what you're paying from the utility, a 24-hour period would be about $1. I always kind of guesstimate about $1 a day per horsepower. So to run that aeration pod would be about $5 a day. To where
Wow.
if the same cost would be a 15 horsepower PD blower at 20 times the amount of money. So maybe not 20, but 10 to 15 times the amount of money. So a regen blower is able to do the same thing. They're 24 hours a day. They're literally good for 2.5 years. If you run them 12 hours a day, they'll last 5 years. And when they're done, it's disposable. You take them up, you pull them out for another $1,000. You got another one in, and you're off and running. So it's just the economy of scale doesn't. I mean, everything's relative. Because
Right.
all wastewater plants are different. Not one size fits all. So everything has to be assessed, for the best product. And our deal is we really make it a driver. And I keep going back to this from the operations end of it. You got to make it easy on the operator. It can't be something that is so maintenance intense. And our system is the quite
Right.
opposite. Sometimes they even forget it's there. So our biggest problems is we we require them to change the air filter. And now by changing, I mean just blowing it out with air and cleaning the air filters is what I probably should say, once a week. And literally, that's the only problem we had. If they don't do that after a month of not cleaning the air filter, it will create a negative vacuum on the blower and it'll trip the blower out because it can't suck enough air through the air filter. Bottom line, that's really the only issue we had. Otherwise, the other advantages over the surface aeration is that by being able to lift it up, you can bring it into shore and pressure wash the diffusers every year or so. And this gets that the organisms off of there, and it will extend the life of the diffusers.
Wow.
So, and it's all right there. Nobody's got to be in danger. Nobody's got to get into the soup. Nobody's got to get into the nasty stuff. And it keeps our operators instead of making them go look for another job.
I can imagine, doing that dirty work of maintaining those lagoons. It from the way you were describing it as an operator, it has a serious yuck factor. And so if you can, they know the job is dirty, but let's not make it any worse than it already has to be.
We're a special breed.
Yeah, I mean, this is a true example of, wow, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, maybe not necessity, but you saw there's got to be a better way, as you being one of these guys literally in the soup, in the trenches, that you were able to develop something that, for the sake of the operator, not for the sake of anybody else, but you wanted the treatment to be right, but let's make it as good as we can for the operator. For that, I really commend you. So for those, small cities that have lagoon systems that would like to see if maybe this could be a solution for some of their compliance challenges, how can they learn more, Dave?
Sure. We have a website. It's www.extraair, and extra is xtra-air.com. And again, we have, I think the biggest driver is our try it before you buy it, which is a kind of a rental program for 18 months. This program allows the municipality to then go and seek grant funding. And the beauty of this is they're renting at this time. So a lot of times grant funding won't pay for something that is purchased prior. So if they get the grant funding, they can then purchase a unit and we will refund them on the back end through a contribution to the sewer district or to whatever district that is, any monies that were outlaid front. So at the end of the day, they're being able to solve their problem, get treatment, search for a funding solution because they're all cash strapped. I mean, I don't know any small systems out there just, having $100 bills, to throw away. And so it gives them the time to do this. One other thing, because it'll come up, and it constantly comes up with CDPHE or and granted, this is United States wide, and we have to check into it, which is the governing body, your state governing body.
Right.
I could just tell you that CDPHE, which is the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, I went to them and said, I'd like to can this thing. I'd like to be able to give it to you so when we take it somewhere, and we don't have a violation. They said, you're not violating. You treat it as a pilot study. The municipality still has to meet their discharge limits. And the only way that the CDPHE or the jurisdiction, I guess, call it, if you keep it permanent, then you would have to do an amendment to your permit. So it kind of gives you that whole time to where you're not going to get in trouble with the state and the state regulators because it's all understood. So if you decide to keep it, then you make the application for an amendment to your wastewater permit, and you're good to go. And then we give you that information and help you along that process also.
Wow. And I think just the fact that you sat in the chair or sat in the seat of being an operator, you're able to help your clients through the ins and the outs of all this, what we call the red tape or the paperwork. And I love that model of, try it before you buy it so that they can find the funding. That's really, that's a great concept. It's a great benefit to them.
Yeah, it's 1,000%, but it's also, we don't want to sell anything that doesn't work. We're in it
Just
for
in
the
case
long
it's
haul.
not a good fit for that particular
Exactly, because
treatment.
not everything is equal, and we want
Right.
to, I got to go home and sleep at night. So I have to be able to know that this thing is, when I tell you something, it's doing what we told you it was going to do. And so by doing this, it says yes. And for me, honestly, I don't think for certain applications, there's a better product out there. There's always, one size doesn't fit all, that type deal. But I'm pretty proud of it. I think that a lot of places can benefit from it. And we're going to keep growing. We're going to kind of new products and keep expanding on it. And yeah, we'll see where this journey takes us.
Yeah. Well, Dave, thank you for telling your story, telling us about this new technology. I hope you listeners got something out of it. If it's intriguing, reach out to Dave, visit his website. He's on LinkedIn. That's how we found each other. And so thank you for tuning in. And until next time, keep it flowing.
Be sure to subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest on the show, click the Be a Podcast guest link below in the show notes for more information. Thanks again for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of the Smells Like Money podcast.